every Christmas number one there's ever been since 1952, including East 17, the Beatles, Spice Girls and Cliff Richard. Bagging the Christmas number one title has always been a coveted race, with artists working on excessively festive anthems to try to win Christmas. Usually reserved for the likes of East 17, Shakin' Stevens, Spice Girls, Cliff Richard and Slade, nowadays musicians don't tend to go for the tracks brimming with festive cheer, bells and jingle about Santa, with this year's number one race being a battle between Ed Sheeran and Eminem for two non-festive tracks. Proof that it's not always a jolly festive song track that succeeds came when Michael Andrew and Gary Jules' Mad World, Rage Against the Machine's Killing in the Name and even the likes of Mr. Blobby and Bob the Builder's Can We Fix It? 1. Since the charts began in 1952, there have been 65 Christmas number ones, with artists including Shakin' Stevens, Slade, the Beatles, Mud, Cliff Richard and Band-Aid bagging the title. Fun fact, the most successful Christmas number one, in terms of how long the song spent at the number one spot overall, was Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You in 1992. To get you in the festive spirit, here we give you every single Christmas number one in the history of Christmas number ones and 1952, Al Martino Here in My Heart spent 9 weeks at the top. 1953 Frankie Lane Answer Me spent 8 weeks at the top. 1954 Winifred Adwell Let's Have Another Party spent 5 weeks at the top. 1955 Dickie Valentine Christmas Alphabet spent 3 weeks at the top. 1956 Johnny Ray Just Walkin' in the Rain spent 7 weeks at the top. 1957 Harry Belafonte Mary's Boy Child spent 7 weeks at the top. 1958 Conway Twitty It's Only Make Believe spent 5 weeks at the top. 1959 Emile Ford and the Checkmates What Do You Want to Make Those Eyes at Me For? Spent 6 weeks at the top. 1960 Cliff Richard and the Shadows I Love You spent 2 weeks at the top. 1961 Danny Williams Moon River spent 2 weeks at the top. 1962 Elvis Presley Return to Sender spent 3 weeks at the top. 1963 The Beatles I Want to Hold Your Hand spent 5 weeks at the top. 1964 The Beatles I Feel Fine spent 5 weeks at the top. 1965 The Beatles Day Tripper, We Can Work It Out spent 5 weeks at the top. 1966 Tom Jones Green Grass of Home spent 7 weeks at the top. 1967 The Beatles Hello, Goodbye spent 7 weeks at the top. 1968 The Scaffold Lily the Pink spent 3 weeks at the top. 1969 Rolf Harris Two Little Boys spent 6 weeks at the top. 1970 Dave Edmunds I Hear You Knocking spent 6 weeks at the top. 1971 Benny Hill Ernie, the fastest milkman in the West, spent 4 weeks at the top. 1972 Jimmy Osmond Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool spent 5 weeks at the top. 1973 Slade Merry Christmas Everybody spent 5 weeks at the top. 1974 Mud Lonely This Christmas spent 4 weeks at the top. 1975 Queen Bohemian Rhapsody spent 9 weeks at the top. 1976 Johnny Mathis When a Child is Born, Soleado, spent 3 weeks at the top. 1977 Wings Mull of Kintyre, Girls' School spent 9 weeks at the top. 1978 Boney M. Mary's Boy Child Oh My Lord spent 4 weeks at the top. 1979 Pink Floyd Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, spent 5 weeks at the top. 1980 St. Winifred's School Choir There's No One Quite Like Grandma spent 2 weeks at the top. 1981 The Human League Don't You Want Me spent 5 weeks at the top. 1982 Renee and Renato Save Your Love spent 4 weeks at the top. 1983 The Flying Pickets Only You spent 5 weeks at the top. 1984 Band-Aid Do They Know It's Christmas? Spent 5 weeks at the top. 1985 Shakin' Stevens Merry Christmas Everyone spent 2 weeks at the top. 1986 Jackie Wilson Reet Petite spent 4 weeks at the top. 1987 Pet Shop Boys Always on My Mind spent 4 weeks at the top. 1988 Cliff Richard Mistletoe and Wine spent 4 weeks at the top. 1989 Band-Aid 2 Do They Know It's Christmas? Spent 3 weeks at the top. 1990 Cliff Richard Saviour's Day spent 1 week at the top. 1991 Queen Bohemian Rhapsody, These Are the Days of Our Lives spent 5 weeks at the top. 1992 Whitney Houston I Will Always Love You spent 10 weeks at the top. 1993 Mr. Blobby spent 2 weeks at the top. 1994 East 17 Stay Another Day spent 5 weeks at the top. 1995 Michael Jackson Earth Song spent 6 weeks at the top. 1996 Spice Girls 2 Become One spent 3 weeks at the top. 1997 Spice Girls Too Much spent 2 weeks at the top. 1998 Spice Girls Goodbye spent 1 week at the top. 1999 Westlife I Have a Dream, Seasons in the Sun spent 4 weeks at the top. 2000 Bob the Builder Can We Fix It? Spent 3 weeks at the top. 2001 Robbie Williams and Nicole Kidman Something Stupid spent 3 weeks at the top. 2002 Girls Aloud Sound of the Underground spent 4 weeks at the top. 2003 Michael Andrews and Gary Jules Mad World spent 3 weeks at the top. 2004 Band-Aid 20 Do They Know It's Christmas? Spent 4 weeks at the top. 2005 Shane Ward That's My Goal spent 4 weeks at the top. 2006 Leona Lewis A Moment Like This spent 4 weeks at the top. 2007 Leon Jackson When You Believe spent 3 weeks at the top. 2008 Alexandra Burke Hallelujah spent 3 weeks at the top. 2009 Rage Against the Machine Killing in the Name spent 1 week at the top. 2010 Matt Cardle When We Collide spent 3 weeks at the top. 2011 Military Wives with Gareth Malone Wherever You Are spent 1 week at the top. 2012 The Justice Collective He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother spent 1 week at the top. 2013 Sam Bailey Skyscraper spent 1 week at the top. 2014 Ben Heno Something I Need spent 1 week at the top. 2015 Lewisham and Greenwich NHS Choir A Bridge Over You spent 1 week at the top. 2016 Clean Bandit featuring Sean Paul and Anne-Marie Rockab spent 9 weeks at the top. 2017 Ed Sheeran Perfect Got a Story? If you've got a story, video or pictures, get in touch with the metro.co.uk entertainment team by emailing us celebtips@metro.co.uk, calling 0203615245 or by visiting our Submit Stuff page. We'd love to hear from you.